Usually when you conduct an autopsy, there's this expectation of, like, precision.
Right, yeah. It's clinical.
Exactly. You look at the body, you find the cause, you write it down on a form, the evidence speaks for itself, blunt force, poison, natural causes. It's just a closed loop.
It's supposed to be an objective recording of facts, yeah. A sequence of events that leaves absolutely no room for interpretation.
Right. But then you step into the world of a closed-door military cover-up, and suddenly, the body is missing. The autopsy report is literally just a single piece of paper, completely blacked out with heavy marker.
Oh, yeah. Totally redacted.
Yeah. Except for one single word left visible, which is hero.
Which is just the absolute definition of a sanitized narrative. I mean, it tells you exactly what they want you to feel about the event while completely hiding the mechanics of what actually happened.
Completely. And that brings us to today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here with us, as always, because we are launching a full forensic investigation into one of the most glaring cover-ups in the entire Empyrean universe.
Oh, this is a big one.
It really is. We are looking at case file number 015, The Resurrection Lie for Empyrean Unlocked. So we're doing a deep dive into Brennan Sorrengail's miraculous survival at the Battle of Aretia.
And, of course, the deeply suspicious disappearance of the siphon writer, Naolin.
Yes. And for this specific mission, we are adopting a bit of a forensic roleplay dynamic, just to warn you.
I love this part.
Right. So I'll be playing the role of Hellion, which basically means I'm going to be tossing out the wild connective conspiracies, probing the dark corners of the lore.
And I would be playing Savage. My job is to demand cold, hard, canonical proof for every single wild claim you make.
I wouldn't have it any other way. So, you think you know what happened at the Battle of Aretia? I'm here to tell you, the official Navarre military account is it's full of holes. Here is why you need to question every piece of history you've ever read in this series.
To do that, we do have a massive stack of sources to cross-examine. We're pulling directly from the texts, so Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and those excerpts from Onyx Storm.
Secret texts.
Exactly. But we are also looking at how those texts are being interpreted, so we're weaving in some incredibly detailed fandom theories from Reddit, pop culture breakdowns, and there's this really fascinating academic case study from Tairn University.
I am so glad you brought up that study right away. It completely rewired how I approach these books.
It's so good.
It is, because it looks at how digital reading communities actively negotiate the legitimacy of a text. Like, readers aren't just passively consuming this story. When the author establishes early on that the official history is just full of lies, the community starts treating the text like a hostile witness.
Yeah, the study highlights that readers are basically trained by the narrative itself to look for the negative space. They do the emotional and logical math that the official text just leaves unspoken.
Right. They reconstruct the meaning to fill in those narrative gaps. And honestly, nothing has a bigger narrative gap than the Battle of Aretia.
Nope.
So we're going to test 5 explanations today. Magical burnout, a sanitized military lie, Brennan's knowing participation, forbidden rune magic, and the terrifying venin transformation.
Let's start with the baseline canon, the official story that the Navarre military wants cadets to believe.
Okay, Savage, lay it out for me. What is the official record?
So the official military record comes directly from Professor Kaori's account in Fourth Wing. According to Kaori, Naolin's signet was siphoning. He had the ability to absorb power from various sources and redistribute it.
Okay, standard siphon stuff.
Right. But during the battle, Kaori claims Naolin attempted to use that massive power to revive a fallen rider, Brennan.
But wait, Kaori explicitly states there is no signet capable of resurrection.
Correct. Official military doctrine dictates that attempting resurrection means trespassing on the territory of Malak, the god of death. It is an impossible boundary. So the official story concludes that Naolin basically absorbed too much power, burned out, and died next to Brennan's body.
A tragic, heroic military death.
Exactly.
Okay, let's stop right there, because I am not buying a word of that. As Hellion, I have to ask, why on earth should you, the listener, believe a Navarrian military account?
I mean, they don't have the best track record.
Navarre's entire history is built on sanitized propaganda. They lied to their citizens about the venin, even existing. They lied about Aretia being utterly destroyed. And they definitely lied about Brennan being dead, because we literally know he is alive and leading a revolution.
You're pointing out a fundamental structural issue with the lore. The reliability of the narrator, the military establishment, is just entirely compromised.
That official account of Naolin's death is exactly like that redacted autopsy report I mentioned. The leadership wants the cadets to see the word hero and absolutely nothing else.
Right, it's a cautionary tale. Don't push your magic too far, or you will burn out and die. They want to enforce obedience and limit experimentation.
Exactly. But as Savage, you need proof, right?
Always. And I actually think your suspicion is completely warranted here. We don't just have to rely on a general distrust of the government. The text actually gives us a glaring forensic clue that the burnout story is a total fabrication. And it comes from Tairn.
Tairn? Who was Naolin's dragon before you bonded Violet?
Yes. In Iron Flame, when Violet brings up Naolin, Tairn doesn't just give a gruff military answer. He dramatically refuses to even use the word dead.
Oh, right.
Yeah, his voice goes rough and he says, "We will no longer speak of the one who came before."
I remember reading that and thinking it felt so out of character for him. Like, Tairn is a battle-hardened warrior. Why is he being so evasive?
We have to look at dragon psychology in this universe. They are incredibly pragmatic, factual creatures. Death is an inevitable consequence of war to them. The text actually states that the death of a cadet is an acceptable tragedy.
So if Naolin simply died of magical burnout, a heroic military death, Tairn would just state it as a fact?
Exactly. Tairn does not mince words. So the evasiveness, the agonizing pain at the mere mention of Naolin, it strongly implies a truth much darker and far more shameful than simple death by burnout.
Okay, so if the military lied, what actually happened? Was Brennan ever actually clinically dead, or was he just dying? Let's parse the dialogue.
Good idea.
In Iron Flame, when Brennan is finally explaining things to Violet, he uses very careful phrasing. He doesn't say Naolin tried and failed. He says, Naolin didn't fail, but it cost him everything.
Right. Didn't fail. If he didn't fail, Brennan survived because of a specific intentional action Naolin took.
But why would he take it? This is where that Soderturn University study really comes to life to me, because this is where the fandom stepped in to reconstruct that emotional math we talked about.
The lover's theory.
Yes. Why would a highly disciplined siphon risk his own life, his dragon, and his eternal soul for a general's son? A siphon's entire magic system is based on calculating the flow of power. Duty doesn't push a pragmatic soldier to trespass on the god of death's territory. Love does.
The academic study points out that readers find value by connecting emotional resonance to plot mechanics. The magic system here is inherently transactional. There is always a cost, a life for a life.
So to save someone who is, as Cowrie said, too far gone, Naolin couldn't just use standard siphoning magic.
Right. He had to pull from a massive source.
And I want to push that even further. I don't think Brennan was just a passive victim bleeding out in the dirt. I think Brennan was a knowing participant in whatever desperate magic Naolin attempted.
Interesting. What makes you say that? Where is the proof?
Look at Brennan's demeanor. He is repeatedly described as looking hollow when certain memories are brought up. He absolutely refuses to discuss the actual mechanics of his resurrection with Violet.
That's true. He shuts it down.
If someone just heroically healed you, you'd be sad they died. But the hollowness, the absolute secrecy, that implies guilt. It implies Brennan knows exactly what the price was, and he has to live with the fact that he let Naolin pay it.
Okay. Savage is satisfied with that emotional read because it actually aligns perfectly with the physical evidence we have. Let's talk about the mechanism of this survival. If it wasn't standard siphoning, how did he do it? We need to look closely at Brennan's palm scar.
The shimmering, rune-shaped scar on his palm. Violet notices it in Iron Flame, and she notes it's distinct from a dragon relic, or the rebellion relics.
Yes. And to understand why that scar is the smoking gun of this entire cover-up, we have to understand the mechanics of siphoning. Hellion, how do you picture a siphon's power working?
The best way I can think of it is like a living extension cord.
Okay, I like that.
Right, like a siphon doesn't create electricity. They just plug into a power source, draw the current through their own conduits, and plug it into a destination to power it up.
That is a perfect analogy. And because they are just the cord, the magic shouldn't leave a permanent, localized structural change on the person receiving the power.
It wouldn't scorch the outlet, basically.
Exactly, and we can actually prove this. We cross-reference Brennan's scar with a highly specific scene from the Onyx Storm excerpts. There is a moment where another siphon, Sloane, performs an extreme high-stakes transfer of power.
Yes, when Mira's bleeding out with her throat slashed.
Right. Brennan is trying to mend her, but he's totally out of power. So Sloane steps in to act as that extension cord. She grabs Dane's wrist to siphon his massive power, and she places her other hand firmly on the back of Brennan's neck to push that power into him.
It's chaotic, it's extreme, and it's totally life-saving siphoning.
Yes. But here's the critical detail. Violet is watching this happen, and the text explicitly notes her observation afterward. She watches Brennan walk away and thinks there's no mark at the back of his neck like he carries on his palm. That hadn't been one on Dane's wrist either. The author deliberately draws our attention to this discrepancy. Standard siphoning, even under brutal stress, moving massive amounts of energy to save a life.
Does not leave a shimmering, rune-shaped scar on the entry or exit point.
Undeniably, it proves that Brennan's resurrection was not a result of a standard siphon transfer.
Which brings up our next theory. Forbidden rune magic. Naolin didn't just act as a conduit, he used magic completely outside the Navarrian codex. I think Naolin inscribed a literal rune into Brennan's flesh to anchor his soul to his body.
We do know from the lore that runes can store immense power and dictate complex magical commands.
Right. So Naolin bypassed the god of death by essentially pinning Brennan's life force to the physical realm with a forbidden rune.
The logic holds, but Hellion, it introduces a massive mechanical problem. If you are a siphon, you can only redistribute what you take in. To anchor a soul that is slipping away into death, the sheer volume of energy required for that is catastrophic.
It's not just powering up a mender, it's rewriting the laws of nature.
Exactly. You need an ocean of magic, not just a cup of water. So if Naolin ran out of his own power and he didn't have 50 other writers standing around agreeing,
where did he get the energy to fuel that rune?
Exactly.
And that question leads us right to the ultimate conspiracy. The most terrifying theory in this entire investigation. Naolin didn't die of magical burnout. He didn't just dabble in forbidden runes. Naolin turned venin to save Brennan.
It's a huge claim.
And not just any venin. The fandom theory is that Naolin-is-the-Sage, the very same sage leading the Dark Wielders in Violet's nightmares.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of turning venin to see if this actually fits the canon. What is the fundamental definition of a venin in this universe?
It's someone who chooses to draw magic directly from the earth rather than safely filtering it through a dragon.
Right. Now go back to your extension cord analogy. A siphon is designed to move safe, filtered power. But what happens if you plug that extension cord directly into a high-voltage, raw power line without a transformer?
It completely fries the cord, it destroys the conduit.
Yes. Picture Naolin on that battlefield. He is a siphon who desperately needs more power to save the man he loves. He is staring at Brennan, who is bleeding out, and Naolin's own hands are empty.
The power of the earth is right there beneath his feet.
Exactly. For a siphon whose entire identity is pulling magic, the temptation to just reach into the ground and pull would be insurmountable. His signet practically predisposes him to becoming venin in a moment of sheer desperation.
Oh, wow. And when you pull that raw earth magic, it exacts a physical toll. Which brings us back to Violet's visions. When she sees the sage, how does she describe him?
She specifically describes the sage as having twisted, parchment-like hands.
Twisted, parchment-like hands. If you are a siphon who just pulled unfiltered, high-voltage magic from the earth through your own body and then pushed it violently into a resurrection rune on someone else's palm, it would physically ravage your hands.
It really would.
The visual evidence of the sage perfectly aligns with the physical cost of a siphon over pushing their absolute limits with earth magic.
It's a compelling physical connection, for sure. But the thematic evidence in Onyx Storm is what really locks this theory into place for me as Savage.
Oh.
There is a crucial conversation where Tairn is speaking about someone who has turned venin. Now, he says it in reference to Xaden, but the magical rule applies universally to anyone who pulls from the earth. Tairn says, his soul is no longer his own.
Oh my God. His soul is no longer his own.
Now, connect Tairn's statement back to Brennan's quote in Iron Flame. Brennan said, Naolin didn't fail, but it cost him everything.
That completely changes the context. If Naolin simply died of burnout, he paid with his life. That's a tragedy, but it's a known cost in war. But if he turned venin, he paid with his soul.
Yes.
Everything suddenly takes on a much more literal, devastating meaning.
And it perfectly explains Tairn's trauma. A dragon's bond with its rider is incredibly intimate. Tairn would have felt Naolin make that choice. He felt his rider reach past their sacred bond, bypass the sanctioned magic of dragonkind, and rip corrupted power from the earth.
So Tairn didn't just lose a rider to a heroic death. He lost his rider to the ultimate corruption.
Exactly. It's a profound betrayal. It explains his utter refusal to speak Naolin's name. It isn't just grief. It is a deep, agonizing shame.
So what does this all mean for you, the reader? This brings us right back to that Soderturn University study about negotiating the truth of a text. When you read these books, you can't just look at the action. You have to look at the psychological wreckage left behind.
The negative space.
Yes. The true tragedy here isn't just that Brennan lived while his friend died. The tragedy is that Brennan wakes up every single day knowing the person he loved became a literal monster to save him. He has to look at that shimmering rune on his palm, and he knows that the man who carved it there is now out in the barrens, amassing an army of nightmares.
It adds an incredible layer of dark complexity to Brennan as a leader. I mean, he is leading a revolution against the venin, all while harboring the secret that he is the very reason one of their most powerful leaders even exists.
It's brilliant, devastating world building. So let's step back and look at the whole board. We set out to investigate this case file, and I think the evidence is overwhelming.
I'd have to agree.
We looked at the military account of magical burnout, and we can confidently toss it out as sanitized propaganda. The lack of a transfer scar on Dane's wrist proves that standard siphoning wasn't the mechanism, pointing directly to forbidden rune magic.
Right.
And the sheer volume of power needed for that rune, combined with the sage's twisted hands and Brennan's hollow guilt, makes a terrifyingly strong case for the venin transformation.
The official narrative has been thoroughly dismantled. The text absolutely supports the fandom's reconstruction of events. But before we close this file entirely, I want to leave you with one final, deeply unsettling theory from the deep corners of the lore. Something that pushes the boundaries of the magic system even further.
Okay, I love when we go off the deep end. What are we looking at?
What if Naolin isn't the sage? What if the venin theory, as solid as it seems, is actually a red herring designed to keep us from seeing something much bigger?
A red herring? What could possibly be bigger than the sage?
Well, there is a concept in the background lore of crossing a third threshold. What happens when a magic user doesn't just pull from the earth, but successfully pulls a soul back from the realm of Malak, the god of death?
Okay, I'm listening.
By executing a true resurrection, what if Naolin didn't become a corrupted venin, but instead ascended into something else entirely? What if he became a living god, or a tether directly to the source of all magic?
Wait, a living god?
Think about the mechanics of the dragon bond. A dragon's life force is intimately tied to their rider. If a rider dies, the dragon often dies with them, especially in a bond as intensely powerful as Tairn's.
Right. They always say Tairn nearly died when he lost Naolin.
But he didn't die. If Naolin merely died of burnout, how did Tairn survive the severing of that bond with such unprecedented strength intact? And if Naolin turned venin, the corruption should have poisoned the bond, potentially killing or corrupting Tairn as well.
That's true, the corruption flows back.
But if Naolin didn't die and didn't turn venin, but ascended to a divine or elemental state, that would explain how the bond was severed without killing Tairn.
Because Naolin's life force didn't end, it just transcended the physical plane.
Exactly. If Naolin became a god or a source tether, the mortal rules of death and bonding no longer apply to him or to his dragon. It explains Tairn's survival, and it explains Tairn's immense, almost unnatural power levels ever since.
That completely shatters everything we know. Because if he ascended, where is he now? Like, is he watching? Can he intervene? And what is the ultimate cost of a mortal becoming a god?
It is a question the text hasn't answered yet, but it is exactly the kind of negative space this author loves to play in. It's something to chew on.
Wow. It just goes to show, every time you peel back a layer of this story, you find an entirely new abyss underneath. It changes how you have to read every single page.
You really have to read between the lines.
Keep questioning the history books they assigned at Baziath. Keep looking for the hidden runes on the palms of the characters. Look for what the dragons refuse to say. Because in the world of Navarre, that clean clinical autopsy report doesn't exist. The truth is never just written on a form. The truth is always buried under the ashes.